Hey guys, this is Brother Shirtlef, and I just wanted to give a quick little introduction to design in this video. So it's just a quick little thing. Hopefully you've gotten a copy of the textbook, the Non-Designer's Design book, and you are going through, you're starting to read through it and understand those four basic design principles that are taught in the book. So to kind of just add to that, there's some things that I like to share that I find help students and that I used when I was teaching at a high school, some of the things that I used to use to teach my students about it. So the first thing is, what is design? I think sometimes people don't really understand what, how would you define it? I didn't have a good idea how I would define it at first either. And as I looked through different examples and stuff, I kind of came up with a definition that I really like. And what it is I like to define design as the purposeful placement of elements in your, on your page or whatever it is you're doing, right? So the purposeful placement of elements. So one of the first things there, the words that's really important is the word purposeful. And the reason is because when you're designing, you're thinking about everything in your design, right? So for instance, in this class, things like flyers or, magazine spreads or posters, whatever it is you're making, you're thinking about everything that you put on that page. You're not just going, I need text, I'll put it here. And you're just putting it there randomly because sure, why not? You're thinking it through and saying, okay, I put it there. Even if you've put it down on the page first, you then look at it and say, okay, well, what's the purpose of having it there? Is it good to have it there? What am I communicating by having my text there? And so you're thinking about the purpose behind everything you do and all the design principles that you use, okay? So the second thing that students sometimes get a little confused with is, what is the difference between a design principle and a design element? So principles and elements are two very different things. And the example that I like to use for principles versus elements that I was taught by some of my art instructors in college was, think about baking or cooking. So when you're cooking, there's two things that you need, right? Two main things that you definitely need, and that's ingredients and a recipe. And, also probably your tools, right? Like bowls and stuff. But that's not part of this specific example of what you need. So you have your ingredients and you have your recipe that tell you when to put the ingredients in, how much to put in, all of that. So those are two very important things. Like if I'm making cookies, I need to know, how many chocolate chips, is a good amount, or, how much butter do I need, how much flour, sugar, forgetting any of those or putting the round amount, maybe putting, if your recipe calls for salt, and it's a dessert, if you put too much salt in, it's not going to be the best dessert. So that's the difference. And so the principles of design are like the recipe for when you're designing something. Your recipe for design is your principles, and the elements are kind of like those ingredients. So examples of elements would things like color, type, shape, okay? Stuff like that are elements, and there's a lot of different elements, and it depends what you're making. But it's the things that you put into your design, right? Those elements you put down onto the page or, on the website, wherever it is you're designing. The principles then are those ingredient or the instructions of how to use those elements. How often, where to place them. Which elements go good together. How to make one element stand out more than the other. Just like with a sweet dessert, you want the flavor, probably the sweet kind of flavor, to stand out over the maybe over other, like a something that's a little more salty, right? Like what do you want to stand out? So you have contrast and repetition, proximity and alignment. Realize too, there are a lot more principles of design, and people use different words for different principles. So there's a lot more that you can learn. And every now and then I'll talk about little things and just kind of give you a little bit more you can learn as you're going along. One of the big things I want you to understand that's important is always kind of think about what your purpose is when you're designing something, what you want to maybe stand out the most. There's a word used in a lot of a principle of design that's used that is by designers and illustrators, and most types of art uses this, and that's focal point. And so I just want to bring that one up because she doesn't really talk about it much in the book. But that's having if you want something to stand out, like let's say you're looking at a book, example, this book right here. This is the thing that you want to stand out the most. That's the focal point. So, you're using those different principles like contrast, alignment, repetition, definitely contrast and proximity and repetition, and some of those, you're using those to make it kind of stand out over everything else on your page. So, as you're using these principles and stuff, always be thinking why. Why should I contrast this font, this word and in this word? And why do I want to contrast this from this? Or why do I want to align these things together? Or, why should I have these things together for proximity? So, this is a lot to take in. Please make sure that you spend time looking at examples and try to identify how they're using contrast and repetition and alignment and proximity and all those things. The big thing to realize is just make sure you're being purposeful with what you do when you design. Okay, so this is just a little introduction. Please make sure you read through the materials, participate in our discussions in class to try to learn as much as you can. And as you start doing these and applying them in your projects, you'll get some really good real-world experience that will help you learn how best to use them. Okay, well, good luck, and please feel free to always email me if you have any questions.